The rope hung from the oak like a prayer left unanswered. Samuel Kane had seen it every morning for 3 weeks now, swaying in the pre-dawn wind that swept across his property. Thick manila hemp, weathered grey, knotted into a noose that cast shadows across the frost-covered ground. It hadn't been there before the woman arrived. She'd appeared at his door on a Tuesday, thin as winter smoke, with eyes that held too much knowledge for someone who couldn't be more than 25. No horse, no wagon, no explanation for how she'd crossed 30 miles of empty prairie to reach his ranch. Just a worn leather satchel and a voice that made his skin crawl when she spoke. "Mr. Kane," she'd said, though he'd never given his name, "I need to warn you about something on your land." That something was the rope. She'd led him to the ancient oak that stood alone in his north pasture, its gnarled branches reaching toward the Montana sky like arthritic fingers. The rope hadn't been there the day before. Samuel was sure of it. He'd ridden past that tree countless times, checking fence lines, moving cattle. He would have noticed. "Don't touch it," the woman had whispered, her breath visible in the cold air. "No matter what you hear, no matter what it promises, don't touch the rope." Samuel had laughed then, the sound harsh in the morning silence. "Lady, I don't know what kind of game you're playing, but Samuel," the voice had come from everywhere and nowhere, carried on the wind like scattered leaves. His own name, spoken in his own voice, drifting down from the empty branches above. The woman's face had gone white as bone, but she hadn't looked surprised. She'd been living in his barn loft ever since, earning her keep by mending tack and cooking meals that tasted better than anything he'd managed in 5 years of bachelor living. She never explained the rope, never spoke of where she'd come from or why she'd sought him out. But every morning she'd stand at the kitchen window watching that oak tree with the intensity of a hawk studying prey. The rope was still there, still swaying, still whispering his name when the wind was right. And Samuel Kane was tired of being afraid of something hanging from his own damn tree. The woman she'd finally told him her name was Mercy was kneading bread dough when Samuel announced his decision. "I'm cutting it down today." Her hands stilled in the flour-dusted bowl. "You can't. It's my land, my tree." Samuel pulled on his work gloves, avoiding her gaze. "I won't be spooked by some rope and a trick echo." "It's not a trick." Mercy's voice carried the weight of certainty that made his chest tight. "That rope has been waiting for you, Samuel. It knows your voice because it's tasted voices before. Men who thought they were stronger than what hangs in that tree." The bread dough forgotten, she turned to face him fully. In the morning light streaming through the kitchen window, Samuel could see faint scars along her throat, thin white lines that hadn't been visible before. "How many men?" he asked quietly. "7, maybe 8. The rope takes what it needs, then waits for the next one." She wiped flour from her hands with mechanical precision. "It's patient. It can wait decades for the right voice, the right desperation." Samuel's jaw tightened. "What makes you think I'm desperate?" The question hung between them like smoke. Mercy studied his face, the deep lines around his eyes, the hollow cut of his cheeks, the way his shoulders had started to bow under invisible weight. 5 years since Mary's death, 5 years of working this ranch alone, talking to cattle and ghosts and the endless Montana sky. "Everyone who finds that rope is desperate," she said finally. "That's why it calls to them." Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the windows. From the direction of the north pasture came a sound like rope creaking under weight, though Samuel knew the noose hung empty. "Samuel," the whisper drifted through the cabin walls, soft as a lover's promise. This time it wasn't alone, other voices joined it, a chorus of names spoken in tones that ranged from pleading to commanding to seductive. Men's voices calling to someone who couldn't answer anymore. Mercy's face went pale. "It's never done that before. Called to others while you're here." Samuel strapped on his gun belt, the leather familiar against his hips. "Then maybe it's time to end this. You don't understand. I understand that I'm being haunted by a piece of rope on my own property." He pulled his hat low, the brim casting shadows across his features. "I understand that you're here for a reason you won't share, warning me about something you won't explain. And I understand that I'm tired of being afraid." The voices outside grew louder, more insistent, names tumbling over each other in the wind. Thomas, William, James, Samuel. Samuel opened the door and the sound rushed in like a flood. The rope was no longer hanging straight. As Samuel approached the oak tree, his boots crunching through frost-brittle grass, he could see the noose swaying in slow, hypnotic circles despite the still air.
And
The voices had faded to whispers, but they hadn't stopped. A constant murmur just at the edge of hearing, like prayers spoken in a distant room. The tree itself looked different in the harsh noon light. The bark was darker, almost black in places, and the ground beneath its sprawling roots was bare of grass in a perfect circle, as if nothing living wanted to grow too close. Samuel. This time the voice came from directly behind him. He spun around, hand moving instinctively to his gun, but found only empty prairie stretching toward the distant mountains. When he turned back to the tree, the rope had stopped moving. It hung perfectly still now, casting a thin shadow across the dead ground, waiting. Samuel pulled out his knife, the blade catching sunlight like a signal mirror. The steel felt reassuring in his grip, something real, something he could trust. He'd cut down plenty of ropes in his life. This one would be no different. But as he stepped closer to the tree, the whispers grew louder. Don't leave us hanging here, Samuel. Cut us down, set us free, join us. It's peaceful here. Mary's waiting. Samuel's step faltered. Mary. They knew about Mary. She misses you, Samuel. Misses your voice. Come closer and we'll show you how to find her. The rope began to sway again, and this time Samuel could see shapes in its movement. The outline of a woman's face, the suggestion of reaching arms. Mary's arms, thin from sickness but still strong enough to hold him when the nightmares came. Touch the rope, Samuel. Just once. Feel what we feel. His hand moved toward the hemp without conscious thought. The voices grew excited, overlapping in their eagerness. Yes, finally. Welcome home. Samuel's fingers were inches from the rope when a gunshot cracked across the prairie.
And
He jerked back, spinning toward the sound. Mercy stood 50 yards away, smoking pistol in her hand, her face set in lines of grim determination. She'd fired into the air, but her aim was now fixed squarely on Samuel's chest. Step away from the tree. Mercy, what are you? Step away.
and
Her voice cracked like a whip. Look at your hand, Samuel. Look at what you were about to do. Samuel glanced down. His right hand was extended toward the rope, fingers spread wide, but it was his left hand that made his blood run cold. It was wrapped around his own throat, squeezing just hard enough to make breathing difficult. He hadn't even realized he was doing it.
and
The voices around the tree rose to a howl of frustration as he stumbled backward, releasing his grip on his own windpipe. The rope swung wildly now, angry and disappointed. Coward, come back. You can't escape us forever.
and
But Samuel was already running toward Mercy, leaving the cursed oak and its hungry rope behind. They didn't speak until they reached the cabin. Samuel's hands shook as he poured coffee, the familiar ritual grounding him after what had happened at the tree.
and
Mercy sat at the kitchen table, her pistol within easy reach, watching him with eyes that held too much understanding. You saved my life, he said finally. I saved your soul. Mercy's voice was matter-of-fact, but Samuel caught the tremor beneath her composure.
and
The rope doesn't just kill, Samuel, it traps. All those voices you heard, they're still there, still conscious, still aware of what they've become. Samuel's coffee cup rattled against its saucer as he set it down. How do you know all this? Instead of answering, Mercy reached into her leather satchel and withdrew something wrapped in faded cloth. She unwrapped it carefully, revealing a photograph mounted in a simple wooden frame. The image showed a young man with kind eyes and a gentle smile, wearing a minister's collar. My brother Thomas, she said quietly. He was the first one the rope called to, back in 1847. He'd come out here to start a church, serve the scattered ranchers and miners, found that tree and thought it would be perfect for hanging a church bell. She traced the edge of the photograph with one finger, the gesture achingly tender. Thomas was always trying to help people, even when they didn't want help, especially then. A sad smile crossed her face. The rope spoke to him in the voice of a woman who died in childbirth, begging him to cut her down, to free her from her suffering. He touched it, trying to help her. "And you've been hunting it ever since?" "I've been hunting it since I was 17 years old. That's when I learned what Thomas had become." Mercy's hand moved unconsciously to the scars on her throat. "The rope called to me too, you see," used his voice, my own brother's voice, begging me to join him. The coffee grew cold between them as she continued. "I almost did. Had the noose around my neck before I realized what I was hearing wasn't really Thomas. Thomas would never ask me to die, not even to be with him. That's when I knew the rope was lying." Samuel studied her face, seeing the weight of decades in her young features. "How long have you been following it?" "Long enough to learn its patterns. It moves when it's fed, relocates to a new tree, waits for the next desperate soul to find it." She looked out the window toward the north pasture, where the oak tree stood silhouetted against the afternoon sky. "It's been here longer than usual, which means it's getting stronger, hungrier. Why didn't you just warn me from the beginning? Tell me all this?" Mercy's laugh held no humor. "Would you have believed me if I'd knocked on your door and said, 'Hello, there's a cursed rope hanging from your tree that wants to steal your souls'?" Samuel considered this. Probably not. People have to see it for themselves, feel its pull. Only then do they understand what they're fighting. She picked up the photograph, staring at her brother's face. But understanding doesn't always make them strong enough to resist. Outside, the wind began to pick up again, carrying with it the faint sound of voices calling from the north pasture. Samuel and Mercy sat in the growing darkness, united by knowledge they'd never wanted, and a battle that wasn't over yet. The fire started at midnight. Samuel woke to the smell of smoke and Mercy's urgent voice calling his name. Through the bedroom window, he could see orange flames dancing around the base of the oak tree, casting wild shadows across the prairie. "It's trying to escape," Mercy said as they ran toward the blaze. "When a cursed rope is threatened, it burns the tree to spread its ashes. Each fragment can grow into a new trap." The rope was writhing now, twisting in the flames like a living thing. The voices of its victims screamed in harmony, not calls of seduction this time, but cries of genuine agony as the fire consumed their prison. "We have to contain it," Mercy shouted over the roar of flames. "If even one ember escapes." Samuel was already moving, grabbing shovels and water buckets from the barn. Together they worked to create a firebreak around the burning tree, stamping out sparks that tried to drift beyond the circle of dead ground. The rope fought them with everything it had. Burning fragments whipped through the air like angry wasps, and the voices rose to a crescendo of rage and desperation. But Samuel found himself no longer afraid of the sounds. They were just echoes now, growing fainter with each passing moment. "Samuel, please." The rope made one final attempt, speaking in Mary's voice as flames consumed its upper reaches. "Don't let me burn. Save me." But Samuel knew better now. Mary would never beg. Mary had faced her death with quiet courage, holding his hand and whispering words of love until the very end. This twisted imitation was an insult to her memory. "That's not her," he said firmly, raising his shovel to beat down another escaped ember. "My Mary is at peace." The rope's scream of fury dissolved into ash and smoke. They worked until dawn, ensuring every fragment was burned to nothing. When the sun rose, only a circle of blackened earth remained where the oak tree had stood. The voices were gone. The whispers had finally stopped. Mercy knelt in the ashes, sifting through them with her bare hands. "It's finished," she said finally. "This one anyway. This one." Samuel wiped soot from his face. "There are others. 7 more last I counted. Maybe 8. She stood, brushing ash from her palms. The rope reproduces, spreads like a disease. Each time someone touches it, it learns, grows stronger, eventually splits off to find new hunting grounds. Samuel looked at the scorched earth where his tree had stood, then at the woman who'd saved him from joining the chorus of the damned. You can't hunt them all alone. I've been doing it for 30 years, not anymore. Samuel's voice was firm with decision. I know what it feels like to be called by that thing. Know how close I came to giving in. If you'll have me, I'd like to help. Mercy studied his face in the morning light, the new steadiness in his eyes, the set of his shoulders that spoke of purpose found rather than lost. Slowly she smiled.
And
My brother always said the best way to honor the dead was to protect the living. She shouldered her leather satchel, already looking toward the horizon. There's one in Colorado that needs our attention. A hanging tree near a gold camp calling to miners who've lost their luck. Samuel nodded, understanding. He took one last look at the blackened circle where his nightmare had ended, then walked back toward the cabin to pack for the journey ahead. Years later, when people spoke of the pair who hunted cursed ropes across the frontier, they would say the woman carried the knowledge and the man carried the hope. But those who knew them best understood the truth. They carried each other, and that was enough to face whatever darkness waited in the trees. The prairie wind swept clean across Samuel Kane's land, carrying no whispers, no promises, no lies, only the honest sound of grass bending toward tomorrow.